He submitted everything, every doctor's note, every lab result, every form the VA requested. On time, double-checked, and properly labeled. He followed the rules, did what they asked, and trusted the system to work. But when he checked his status weeks later, something didn't make sense. His claim was marked incomplete. No explanation, no missing item listed. Just that one word, incomplete, sitting there like a silent accusation, threatening to undo everything he'd worked for. If you've ever dealt with the VA, you already know this isn't rare. Files disappear. Evidence gets lost, and veterans who do everything right still get punished for things out of their control. It's not always about missing paperwork. It's about how that paperwork is handled once it's out of your hands. And unless you understand how this system works behind the scenes, you might never know what went wrong or how to fix it. In this video, we're going to unpack exactly how a fully submitted VA file can still end up flagged as incomplete. You'll learn where things go missing, how that impacts your benefits, and what steps you can take right now to protect yourself from being misfiled, mislabeled, or ignored. Stay with me, because what happened next nearly cost him everything. And it could happen to you too. When he got the notice that his VA file was marked incomplete, he was confused, but not alarmed. He figured it was just a system delay. After all, he had submitted everything, medical records from both VA and private doctors, a signed nexus letter, personal statements, even a detailed log of his symptoms. He kept copies of it all, but when he called to ask what was missing, the response he got was vague. Some documentation didn't make it into your claim folder. That's when it hit him. This wasn't a delay. It was a disappearance. The reality is, in the VA system, submitting your documents isn't the same as having them officially processed. Just because you upload a file, fax it in, or drop it off in person doesn't mean it actually ends up in the right place. If a document isn't indexed correctly, meaning it's not attached to the right claim, date, or issue, it might as well not exist. VA adjudicators and raters rely on what's visible in the electronic file. If they can't see it, they assume it was never sent, and once that assumption is made, your file gets flagged. That's exactly what happened here. His nexus letter, arguably the most critical piece of evidence, had been scanned, but it wasn't linked to his claim. So from the rater's perspective, it simply wasn't there. No one reached out. No one flagged it for review. Instead, the entire claim was downgraded for lack of medical support. And just like that, months of preparation and documentation vanished into a bureaucratic black hole. This isn't rare. It's not even unusual. Veterans across the country have watched key parts of their claims disappear into the system, not because they forgot, but because the system failed. And when that happens, the burden quietly shifts back onto you. You're expected to resubmit, to follow up, to chase a paper trail that should have been tracked the first time. But what happens if you don't realize it's missing? What if you trust the upload confirmation and never double-check? That's where most people lose. Not because they didn't try, but because they didn't know the rules were rigged from the start. And what he found out next made things even worse. After learning that his nexus letter wasn't showing up in the system, he assumed a quick fix was possible. Just resubmit it, right? But when he called the VA to clarify, the response wasn't reassuring. The representative told him to wait for further instructions because the claim was already marked incomplete, and now it had been routed to a different team. That meant more delays, more silence, more risk that the clock could run out on his window to respond. And here's what most veterans don't know. Once your claim is flagged as incomplete, it gets stuck in a kind of limbo. It's not being actively reviewed, and it's not moving forward. You may have all your evidence submitted, but unless someone manually updates your file, your claim just sits. Days become weeks, weeks become months. And all the while, the system treats it as if you dropped the ball. This is where the second mistake often happens. He thought he just had to be patient. But patience in this process can be dangerous. The VA assumes silence means you agree with their decision. If you don't push back fast enough, if you don't submit a follow-up with proof that your documents were submitted on time, you risk having the entire claim denied, or worse, closed. He started digging. Luckily, he had kept the email confirmations from his upload. He had a copy of the time-stamped fax sheet. He even had a screenshot of the VA Gov portal showing the upload date. Those records became his shield. Without them, he would have had no way to prove the evidence was submitted on time. But even with proof, he had to submit a formal statement to request that the file be reviewed again, and that pushed everything back another 60 days. What most people never hear is that the VA doesn't always notify you when something's missing. If they think it's your fault, they may not give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's what almost cost him everything. Because if he hadn't followed up, if he hadn't kept his own paper trail, his entire claim might have been denied on technical grounds, even though he had done everything right. But the deeper issue? It wasn't just a missing document. What he uncovered next revealed how vulnerable every file in the VA system really is, even the ones marked complete. He thought the worst was behind him. The Nexus letter was resubmitted, the call logs documented, and a formal statement was filed, asking the VA to reevaluate his claim with the correct evidence. It should have been straightforward. But when his claim finally moved to the next phase, something didn't sit right. The summary of evidence listed only 2 items: a VA exam report and his original application. No mention of his Nexus letter. No mention of the private medical records he had submitted. Just 2 basic entries, and both were incomplete. That's when he realized something even more frustrating. It wasn't that the VA had lost his evidence, it's that it was never properly linked. Documents in the VA's digital system must be tagged to a specific contention and phase of the claim. If someone uploads a file but forgets to check a box or enter a detail, that file doesn't show up where it needs to. It gets dumped into the general file system, out of sight, out of mind. And unless a claims processor knows to look for it, it's ignored. So while he thought his file was complete, the rater reviewing it saw only fragments. No supporting medical opinions, no updated treatment notes, nothing that would justify a favorable decision. And here's the part that really stings. Even though the documents were technically there, the VA isn't required to hunt for them. If they're not properly indexed, it's not their responsibility. The burden falls back on the veteran to make sure everything is visible, traceable, and attached to the correct issue. He learned the hard way that, in the VA system, visibility equals validity. It doesn't matter if you sent it, scanned it, or uploaded it. If the right eyes don't see it at the right time, it's as good as gone. That's why some veterans with strong evidence get denied, because the evidence never reaches the decision maker. Not because they did something wrong, but because the system failed to connect the dots. And that's when he made a decision most people don't make until it's too late. He stopped relying on the assumption that the system would work as expected. He started tracking every piece of correspondence, screenshotting every upload, and cross-referencing every summary of evidence. Because the next time something disappeared, he wanted to be ready to fight back. And what happened next would make that decision absolutely necessary. Weeks later, he finally received the decision letter, but instead of relief, it brought confusion. The denial said there was no evidence provided to support a service connection. Not that the condition wasn't real, not that it wasn't severe, just that, supposedly, there wasn't proof it was linked to service. That's when he felt the gut punch. They never reviewed the Nexus letter at all. It wasn't just a clerical error, it was a breakdown in accountability. His entire case hinged on that letter. It explained how his condition stemmed directly from his time in service, backed by years of medical treatment and a clear timeline. But none of that was mentioned. In the eyes of the VA, it never existed. He called again, this time asking for a supervisor. After nearly 2 hours on hold, someone finally admitted what he feared. The letter had been received, but was not associated with the correct contention. In plain terms, it was sitting in his digital file, but not connected to the part of his claim that needed it, so the reviewer never saw it, and the denial went through based on incomplete evidence. This is a nightmare more common than people think. Veterans do everything right, submit on time, follow instructions, double-check every form, only to be denied because the system misplaces or mishandles the most important document. And unless you know how to read a denial letter carefully, you might miss the clues. Vague phrases like "no evidence received" or "insufficient support for service connection" are red flags. They don't always mean the evidence isn't there. They often mean no one looked at it. So now he faced a decision: accept the denial or file a supplemental claim with the exact same evidence, but this time with a cover letter, clear document labels, and proof that everything was submitted the first time. It felt like starting over, but he knew if he didn't fight it, the mistake would become permanent. And what most veterans never realize is this: once a denial goes into the record, it shapes every future decision. Even if the next rater sees the missing document, they're still looking through the lens of that original denial. That's why it's not just about fixing the record, it's about controlling the narrative before it locks in. And just when he thought things couldn't get more twisted, the timeline started to close in, and the system's next move caught him completely off guard. The VA had already denied his claim, but the clock was ticking on his right to appeal. He had 12 months to file a supplemental claim with new and relevant evidence. But here's the catch. What if the evidence wasn't new, just overlooked? That was the trap. The letter he submitted wasn't new. It had already been in the file. He just hadn't known that it wasn't connected properly. And if he resubmitted the same letter, would they say it didn't qualify as new? Would they deny him again, this time for good? He spoke with other veterans in the same position and found a pattern. Denials were issued based on missing documents. Then, when those same documents were reattached later, they were dismissed as not new. The appeal would get tossed out before it even reached a rater. It wasn't just a paperwork issue, it was a game of technicalities. And if you didn't understand the rules, you could lose everything. That's when he learned one of the most important lessons in the VA system. How you present your evidence matters just as much as the evidence itself. Simply uploading the Nexus letter again wasn't enough. He had to build context. He had to write a short statement explaining that the letter had been submitted on a specific date, was present in the digital record, but was not properly associated with the claim. He cited the denial language directly, showing that the rater never acknowledged the document. And most importantly, he submitted it as part of a supplemental claim with a signed affidavit, treating it like a legal correction. That was the difference. It reframed the evidence not as something new, but as something mishandled. And the VA has a legal obligation to consider any document that was previously submitted but not reviewed. But most veterans don't know this. They think a denial is the end, or worse, they resubmit blindly without an explanation and get denied all over again. He mailed the packet himself, certified delivery. Then he called the VA, not once, but twice, to confirm it was received and uploaded. And he asked the rep to notate the call in his file. He was no longer playing defense. He was building a record of accountability. Because he understood something now. The VA system doesn't reward silence. It rewards persistence. But just as he started to feel in control again, a different complication emerged. One that had nothing to do with paperwork and everything to do with how the VA actually views intent to file, and how that tiny checkbox can put your entire back pay at risk. He thought he was being proactive when he submitted his intent to file months before his claim. That small form, just a single page, was supposed to lock in his effective date. It gave him a full year to gather records, get medical opinions, and prepare everything properly. He submitted it online, got the confirmation screen, and even took a screenshot, just in case. But what he didn't realize was that screenshots don't mean anything if the VA system doesn't officially log the form. By the time he submitted his full claim, with every document, including the Nexus letter, the VA said his effective date would be based on the claim, submission, not the intent. That meant a loss of nearly 10 months of back pay. He was stunned. He had done everything right, or so he thought. When he called to ask why his intent to file wasn't honored, the representative gave a vague answer. "We don't show any record of that form being received." He reminded them it was submitted online. Still, no record, no confirmation number, just a dead end. That's when it hit him. In the VA system, if it's not documented in their record, it might as well not exist. You can't rely on screenshots. You need actual proof, preferably a PDF copy, a fax receipt, or a certified mail confirmation. The system is built to track formal documents, not browser history. And when something goes wrong, the burden is on the veteran to prove the submission happened. So now, instead of getting back pay from nearly a year ago, he was stuck with an effective date tied to when his full claim was received. That's thousands of dollars lost, not because of a mistake he made, but because the system failed to recognize something he did right. He appealed, of course, filed a statement arguing that his intent to file was submitted on time, with the screenshot as supporting evidence. But he knew the outcome was uncertain. Screenshots help your case, but they're not always enough to reverse a timeline decision. And here's the deeper issue. This kind of technical setback doesn't just hurt financially. It erodes trust. It teaches veterans that following the rules isn't enough. You have to document how you followed the rules every step of the way. He started telling other veterans, "Never assume the system will remember for you. Always download copies, always get delivery confirmation, and always keep a copy for yourself, because once that effective date slips past, you may never get it back." And just when he thought he had done everything to fix it, another letter arrived, this time not from the VA, but from a third-party contractor. And what it said would change everything he thought he understood about who was really handling his case. This story isn't just about one man's VA claim. It's about a system that makes veterans fight harder than they should have to. He submitted everything on time, followed every rule, and still got penalized for something he didn't do wrong. That's the part that stings, not just the missing back pay or the delays, but the feeling that even when you do everything right, the system still finds a way to push back. It raises a question many veterans quietly ask themselves: what else could I have done? And the truth is, sometimes the answer isn't do more, it's protect yourself better. Document everything, save copies, double-check, even after you've received confirmation. Because once something's marked incomplete, reversing that decision isn't always simple, or even possible. But here's what matters most. You're not powerless. The more you understand how the VA works behind the scenes, the real rules, not just the ones they tell you, the more control you have over your own claim. You can't afford to trust the process blindly. You have to navigate it actively. If you're watching this and seeing pieces of your own story in it, don't wait until the damage is done. Go back, double-check your records. Get familiar with how your file is being handled, and if you know another veteran who's filing right now, or about to, send this to them. It might save them from a mistake they never saw coming. Thank you for being here with us today. Your time and attention mean more than you know. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss future videos that break down the system and give you the tools to fight smarter. And we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below sharing one thing you learned or a lesson you wish someone had told you earlier. Your stories not only help us, but they help other veterans watching right alongside you. Stay informed, stay prepared, and most of all, stay in control. We'll see you in the next one.